It was a Wednesday afternoon at Denver International Airport, and Terminal B was buzzing with the usual chaos. Families dragged oversized suitcases, business travelers tapped away on laptops in gate lounges, and somewhere near Gate 37, a woman named Patricia Drummond was about to set into motion the most calculated, vindictive plan she'd ever conceived. Patricia wasn't your average traveler. She was a 52-year-old real estate broker from Scottsdale, Arizona, dressed in a cream blazer that screamed old money, her hair pulled back so tight it could have been a facelift. But beneath that polished exterior was something dark, something that had been festering for weeks. And today, she was going to get even. Her target? A woman named Lisa Chen, 34, a rising tech consultant who had unknowingly humiliated Patricia at a corporate conference 3 weeks ago. Lisa didn't remember it, of course. She'd simply asked a pointed question during Patricia's panel presentation, exposing a gap in Patricia's outdated market analysis. The audience had laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly, but enough. Enough for Patricia to feel the sting, the heat crawling up her neck, the flash of rage behind her practiced smile. And Patricia Drummond did not forget slights. She collected them like coins, storing them away until the perfect moment for payback arrived. And that moment was now. Patricia had done her homework. She discovered through mutual LinkedIn connections that Lisa was flying from Denver to Boston today. Same flight, same time. Coincidence? No. Patricia had changed her own flight, paid the fee, and positioned herself perfectly. In her designer handbag, tucked inside a small zippered pocket, was a clear plastic baggie containing about 2 ounces of white powder. It wasn't cocaine, of course. Patricia wasn't stupid. It was baking soda, carefully measured and packaged to look exactly like what security would assume it was. Her plan was simple, elegant, and vicious. She would slip the baggie into Lisa's carry-on during the chaos of boarding, then make an anonymous tip to TSA. Lisa would be detained, questioned, possibly arrested. Her reputation would be shattered, her career derailed, and Patricia would watch it all unfold from a safe distance, sipping her overpriced airport Chardonnay. What Patricia didn't know was that her perfect plan had already begun to unravel before she'd even taken her first step. The airport security cameras had been watching her since she entered the terminal, not because anyone suspected her yet, but because airports are surveillance fortresses, recording every angle, every movement, every breath. Camera 12 above the coffee stand captured Patricia, purchasing a large latte, her eyes scanning the crowd. Camera 9 followed her as she moved toward the gate area, her gait purposeful, predatory. And camera 23, positioned directly above gate 37, would soon record everything that mattered. Lisa Chen stood near the boarding area, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of the storm gathering around her. She was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, her black carry-on bag resting against her leg. She'd had a long morning of client meetings and was looking forward to sleeping on the flight. She noticed the woman in the cream blazer hovering nearby, but didn't think much of it. Airports were full of hovering people. Patricia moved closer, her heart pounding with adrenaline. This was it. She'd timed it perfectly. The gate agent had just called for Zone 2 boarding, and people were starting to cluster around the desk, creating the exact kind of confusion she needed. Patricia positioned herself behind Lisa, close enough to reach out and touch her bag. Her fingers found the zipper of her own purse, locating the plastic baggie. She could feel its weight, its potential for destruction. All she had to do was wait for the right moment. But then something unexpected happened. A TSA officer named Marcus Webb had been watching Patricia for the last 4 minutes. Not officially, not as part of any investigation, but because something about her behavior had triggered his instincts. Marcus was a 12-year veteran of airport security, and he'd learned to read people the way others read books. Patricia's body language was all wrong. She wasn't looking at her phone, wasn't checking her boarding pass, wasn't doing any of the normal pre-boarding rituals. Instead, she was fixated on the woman in front of her. Her movements too calculated, too precise. Marcus had seen this pattern before. Usually it meant a pickpocket or a distraction thief. He moved closer, positioning himself where he could watch without being obvious. Patricia saw her opening. Lisa had set her bag down for just a moment to pull up her boarding pass on her phone. The bag's outer pocket was partially unzipped. Perfect. Patricia's hand moved with practiced smoothness, fingers curling around the baggie inside her purse. But just as she was about to make her move, a child crashed into her from the side, a boy of maybe 6, running at full speed and laughing. Patricia stumbled, her hand jerking back, the baggie almost falling from her grip. She caught it, shoved it back into her purse, and shot the child a look of pure venom. The boy's mother grabbed him, apologizing, but Patricia barely heard her. Her heart was racing now, her perfect plan momentarily disrupted. She took a breath, steadied herself. It was fine. She still had time. The boarding was moving slowly, as it always did. She repositioned herself, waiting for another opportunity. Marcus Webb had noticed the stumble, noticed the way Patricia's hand had jerked back into her purse, noticed the flash of something white before it disappeared. His instincts sharpened. He spoke quietly into his radio, alerting his supervisor that he might have something developing at Gate 37. His supervisor, a woman named Angela Rodriguez, acknowledged and told him to keep watching, but not to approach yet, unless he saw clear illegal activity. Patricia's second opportunity came 3 minutes later. Lisa had moved into the boarding line, shuffling forward with the crowd. Her bag was now in her hand, hanging by her side. Patricia squeezed into line directly behind her, close enough to smell Lisa's shampoo. The baggie was in her palm now, hidden by the fold of her blazer. She just needed Lisa to set the bag down for 1 second. Just 1 second. And it would be done. But Lisa kept the bag in her hand. She moved forward, showed her boarding pass, and walked down the jetway without ever setting it down. Patricia felt a spike of frustration. Fine. She'd do it on the plane. It would be riskier, but not impossible. She followed Lisa down the jetway, her mind already adjusting the plan. She'd wait until Lisa stowed her bag in the overhead bin, then create some kind of distraction, maybe drop something, and while Lisa was looking away, she'd slip the baggie into the bag's pocket. Then, once they were in the air, she'd go to the bathroom and use the onboard Wi-Fi to send an anonymous tip to Boston TSA, claiming she'd seen Lisa acting suspicious with a white powder. They'd be waiting for Lisa when the plane landed. Perfect. Even better than the original plan. Actually, because Lisa would be trapped on the plane with no way to escape. Marcus Webb had also boarded, but he'd done so through a different gate entrance, flashing his TSA credentials to the gate agent. He was now standing near the front of the aircraft, watching as passengers filed in. He'd radioed Angela again, explaining the situation, and she'd given him clearance to stay on the plane until takeoff if needed. Angela had also pulled up the security footage from the gate area and was reviewing it frame by frame. What she saw made her sit up straighter. The woman in the cream blazer had clearly been fixated on the Asian woman with the black carry-on. And in one frame, just before the child crashed into her, Angela could see something white in the blazer woman's hand. It was subtle, easy to miss, but it was there. Angela made a decision. She contacted the captain of Flight 2847 and requested a brief hold before pushback. The captain, a veteran named Roger Steinberg, wasn't happy about it, but agreed when Angela explained there might be a security issue that needed resolution. Angela then dispatched 2 additional officers to Gate 37 with instructions to board the aircraft and discreetly monitor the situation. Patricia had no idea any of this was happening. She was settling into her seat, 14C, 3 rows behind Lisa, who was in 11F, a window seat. Patricia had specifically requested an aisle seat with a clear view of her target. She watched as Lisa struggled briefly with her overhead bin, then successfully stowed her bag. Patricia's own bag was small enough to fit under the seat in front of her, which was perfect. She'd need mobility for what came next. The plane continued boarding, filling up with tired travelers, excited vacationers, and business people already dreading the emails waiting for them. Patricia checked her watch. 20 minutes until scheduled departure. She'd make her move in about 5 minutes, once the boarding rush calmed and people were settled. She could feel the baggie in her blazer pocket now, could feel its promise of revenge. Lisa Chen had plugged in her earbuds and closed her eyes, trying to catch a few minutes of peace before takeoff. She had no idea that 3 rows behind her, a woman was plotting her destruction. She had no idea that 6 feet in front of her, a TSA officer was watching that same woman with growing suspicion. She was just tired, just ready to go home. Patricia made her move during the safety demonstration. Perfect timing. Everyone was either watching the flight attendants or ignoring them completely, and the aisle was mostly clear. She stood up, making a show of reaching for something in the overhead bin, then deliberately fumbled and dropped her phone. It clattered into the aisle, rolling forward, stopping just beside row 11. Patricia stepped into the aisle, bending down to retrieve it, bringing herself level with Lisa's row. Lisa's bag was in the overhead bin directly above. Patricia's hand moved to her pocket, fingers closing around the baggie. But then a flight attendant appeared, smiling helpfully, picking up Patricia's phone before Patricia could reach it. The attendant handed it to her with a cheerful, "Here you go," and Patricia had no choice but to take it, smile, and return to her seat. She wanted to scream. Another interruption, another delay, but it was fine. She'd just wait until after takeoff, until the seatbelt sign went off, and then she'd try again. Marcus Webb had watched the entire interaction. He'd seen Patricia stand, seen her drop the phone, seen the way her hand had moved toward her pocket in that brief moment when she bent down. He was now 90% certain this woman was up to something. He moved down the aisle, taking a position near row 13, pretending to help a passenger with their bag. From here, he could watch Patricia directly. The 2 additional TSA officers had also boarded and positioned themselves at the front and rear of the aircraft, dressed in plain clothes so as not to alarm passengers. Angela Rodriguez was still in the security office, watching the recorded footage and coordinating with the team on the plane. She'd also run Patricia Drummond's name through the system and discovered something interesting. Patricia had filed 3 formal complaints with various airlines in the past 2 years, all claiming other passengers had harassed or stolen from her. In each case, the airlines had found no evidence to support her claims. One airline had even flagged her as a potential problem passenger. Angela's suspicions deepened. The plane pushed back from the gate, and within minutes they were taxiing toward the runway. Patricia felt her window closing. She needed to act soon, before they were in the air, before Lisa's bag became harder to access. But the seatbelt sign was still on, and the flight attendants were doing their final checks. She forced herself to be patient. Just a few more minutes. Then the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Steinberg. We've been asked to return to the gate briefly for a minor administrative issue. Nothing to be concerned about, should only be a few minutes. We apologize for the inconvenience." Patricia felt ice water flood her veins. Return to the gate? Why? Was it possible they knew? No, impossible. She hadn't done anything yet. This had to be coincidence, some unrelated issue. She forced herself to breathe normally, to keep her expression neutral. Lisa Chen groaned softly. She just wanted to get home. She pulled out her phone to text her husband about the delay. The plane turned around and headed back to gate 37. When it stopped, the main cabin door opened and 3 uniformed TSA officers entered the aircraft, along with 2 airport police officers. The lead TSA officer, Angela Rodriguez herself, walked down the aisle with her eyes scanning the passengers. She stopped at row 14, looking directly at Patricia Drummond. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me, please." Patricia's mind went blank with shock. Then it raced. How? How did they know? She hadn't done anything. The baggie was still in her pocket. There was no evidence, no proof, unless someone had seen her at the gate, unless those cameras had caught something. But even so, what could they prove? She'd been standing in line. She'd dropped her phone. She hadn't actually done anything illegal yet. She decided to play innocent. "I'm sorry, is there a problem? We need to ask you a few questions. Please gather your belongings and come with us." Patricia's hands were shaking as she reached under the seat for her bag. This couldn't be happening. This was supposed to happen to Lisa, not to her. She stood, her legs unsteady, and followed Angela Rodriguez down the aisle. As she passed row 11, she couldn't help glancing at Lisa, who was watching with the same curious confusion as all the other passengers. They took Patricia off the plane and into a small security office near the gate. 2 officers stood by the door while Angela Rodriguez sat across from Patricia at a metal table. Marcus Webb stood in the corner watching. Angela spoke calmly. "Ms. Drummond, we've been monitoring your behavior for the past 30 minutes, and we have some concerns. You've been displaying what we consider suspicious activity focused on another passenger. We'd like to ask you some questions and, with your permission, search your belongings." Patricia's lawyer instincts kicked in. "I don't consent to any search. I haven't done anything wrong. You have no right to detain me." Angela nodded. You're correct that you can refuse consent. However, I should inform you that we have probable cause based on your behavior and video evidence from the terminal. If you refuse consent, we'll simply obtain a warrant, which will take about 30 minutes. During that time, you'll be detained here. Or you can consent now. And if there's nothing to find, you'll be back on your flight within 10 minutes. Your choice. Patricia's mind raced through her options. If she refused, they'd get the warrant and they'd find the baggie. But they'd find it either way. Unless she could somehow get rid of it. But she was being watched by 4 people in a small room with no bathroom access. There was no way. Her only option was to deny. Claim the powder was something innocent if they found it. Baking soda for heartburn. A home remedy. Something. Fine. Search away. You won't find anything because I haven't done anything. Angela nodded to one of the officers, who brought forward Patricia's designer handbag and her small carry-on. They started with the carry-on, methodically going through each pocket, each compartment. Nothing. Then they moved to the handbag. Patricia's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. The officer's hand went into the main compartment, pulling out a wallet, a makeup bag, a packet of tissues. Then the hand moved to the small zippered pocket on the side. The officer pulled out the clear plastic baggie, containing white powder. The room went completely silent. Angela. Rodriguez looked at Patricia with no expression. Ms. Drummond, what is this? Patricia's mouth was dry. It's baking soda. For heartburn. I always carry it when I travel. In a plastic baggie? Not in a labeled container? I transferred it. It's easier to carry that way. Marcus Webb stepped forward. Ma'am, if it's just baking soda for heartburn, why were you attempting to place it in another passenger's bag? Patricia's face went white. I wasn't. I don't know what you're talking about. Angela pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Patricia. On the screen was security footage from Gate 37. Crystal clear, time-stamped, showing Patricia reaching into her purse while standing behind Lisa Chen, her hand emerging with something white. Then the child crashing into her. Another clip showing her on the plane, reaching toward her pocket while bent down in the aisle near row 11. We have over 20 minutes of footage showing you fixated on Ms. Chen, positioning yourself behind her, and attempting to access either her person or her belongings while concealing this substance. You want to explain that? Patricia felt reality crumbling around her. They had everything, every movement, every moment, every intention documented and recorded. Her perfect plan hadn't just failed. It had been exposed before she'd even executed it. She did the only thing she could think of. She leaned back and said, I want a lawyer. Angela Rodriguez nodded. That's your right. But I should inform you that we're conducting a field test on this substance right now. She gestured to another officer who had taken the baggie to a corner of the room. He was using a test kit, the kind designed to give preliminary results for various substances. 30 seconds later, he looked up. It's testing negative for all controlled substances. Appears to be sodium bicarbonate, baking soda. Patricia felt a tiny surge of hope. See, it was just baking soda. They couldn't prove intent. They couldn't prove anything. But Angela wasn't done. Ms. Drummond, attempting to plant a substance designed to look like an illegal drug in another person's belongings with the intent to cause them harm, false arrest, or legal jeopardy, is a crime. It's called filing a false report, tampering with evidence, and depending on the jurisdiction, can also include harassment, stalking, and attempted fraud. The fact that the substance isn't actually cocaine doesn't matter. Your intent does. And we have that intent documented on video. Patricia's hope evaporated. She'd been so focused on making sure it wasn't real drugs, on protecting herself from serious drug charges, that she hadn't considered the other laws she might be breaking. Angela continued. We're also going to be contacting Ms. Lisa Chen to see if she has any idea why you might be targeting her. Is there a prior relationship? A dispute? Something that motivated this? Patricia said nothing, but in her mind she was screaming. That corporate conference, that stupid question, that tiny moment of embarrassment that she'd blown up into a justification for destroying someone's life. How could she explain that to police? How could she explain that she'd planned this elaborate revenge over something so small, so petty? The answer was, she couldn't. While Patricia sat in silence, Angela Rodriguez stepped out of the room and made her way back to the gate. The flight had been held, and passengers were restless, but Angela needed to speak with Lisa Chen before releasing the aircraft. She boarded again and approached row 11. "Miss Chen, I'm Angela Rodriguez with TSA. Could you step out into the jetway for a moment? There's no problem with you, but we need to ask you a few questions." Lisa followed, confused and worried. In the jetway, Angela explained the situation. A woman named Patricia Drummond had been caught attempting to plant a substance in Lisa's belongings, a substance designed to look like illegal drugs. Did Lisa know Patricia? Was there any history between them? Lisa's eyes widened. "Patricia Drummond? From Drummond Realty? Oh my God. We were on a panel together at a conference last month. I asked her a question about her market analysis. It was just a professional question. She seemed upset, but I thought, it was just a conference. I didn't think..." Angela nodded. "Sometimes people fixate on perceived slights. You didn't do anything wrong, Ms. Chen. This woman has serious issues that have nothing to do with you. But you should know that if she had succeeded in planting this substance, you would have been detained by law enforcement, possibly arrested, and would have had to prove your innocence. It would have been traumatic and potentially damaging to your reputation and career." Lisa felt sick. Over a conference question? Over a professional exchange? She'd almost had her life derailed because some woman couldn't handle a minor critique? Angela continued. "We caught it because our officers are trained to recognize suspicious behavior. But I wanted to ask if you want to press charges. You're the victim here." Lisa thought for a long moment. Part of her wanted to just forget it, get on with her life. But another part, the part that had just realized how close she'd come to disaster, felt angry. What Patricia had tried to do wasn't just mean. It was evil, calculated, cruel, and potentially life-destroying. "Yes, I want to press charges. People can't just do things like this." Angela nodded. "I agree. We'll be in touch with the details. For now, you're free to continue your flight. We apologize for the delay." Lisa returned to her seat, her hands still shaking. The other passengers asked if everything was okay, and she just nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As the plane finally pushed back from the gate, this time for real, she looked out the window and saw police escorting a woman in a cream blazer across the tarmac. Patricia Drummond's perfect plan had become her perfect downfall. Back in the security office, Patricia was being processed. Airport police had taken over from TSA, and she was being charged with attempted filing of a false police report, criminal mischief, harassment, and tampering with evidence. Because she'd planned to make an anonymous tip that would have involved federal resources, there were additional federal charges being considered. Her lawyer, when he finally arrived 2 hours later, looked at the evidence in the video footage and told her bluntly that she had no defense. The best they could do was negotiate a plea deal. Patricia's life unraveled quickly after that. The story made local news, then national news, because it was so bizarre, so calculated, so petty. "Real estate broker attempts to frame tech consultant over conference question" was the headline that destroyed her career. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Her clients dropped her. Her professional reputation, built over 25 years, evaporated in 72 hours. Lisa Chen, meanwhile, gave a single interview to a tech publication, handling the situation with grace and professionalism. She talked about the importance of airport security, about how this experience had shown her that professionals should never take criticism personally, and about how she hoped Patricia would get the help she clearly needed. The interview went viral. Lisa's consulting firm saw a surge in inquiries. Her career didn't just survive, it thrived. 6 months later, Patricia Drummond stood in a courtroom and pleaded guilty to criminal mischief and attempted filing of a false report. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Sandra Cho, looked at Patricia with something like pity mixed with contempt. "Ms. Drummond, I've read the evidence in this case, and I have to say, in 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen something so calculated yet so pointless. You were willing to destroy another person's life over what amounts to professional embarrassment. You displayed stunning cruelty, meticulous planning, and absolutely zero conscience. The only reason you're not facing more serious charges is that you were caught before you could complete your plan. But make no mistake, your intent was clear, and your actions were criminal." Judge Cho sentenced Patricia to 18 months in county jail, 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory psychological counseling, and restitution to Lisa Chen for legal fees and emotional distress. She also issued a permanent restraining order preventing Patricia from any contact with Lisa. As Patricia was led away, she looked back at the gallery one last time. Her ex-husband was there, shaking his head. Her adult children had refused to come. The courtroom was mostly empty except for a few reporters and court staff. Her life, her reputation, her freedom, all gone. And for what? For a question asked at a conference. For a tiny, perceived slight that she'd magnified into a justification for attempted destruction. The story became a cautionary tale in airport security training programs. Videos of the security footage, with faces blurred for privacy, were used to teach TSA officers how to recognize suspicious behavior patterns. The case was cited in legal journals as an example of how technology and surveillance can prevent crimes before they happen. And in psychology courses, Patricia Drummond became a case study in narcissism, revenge fantasies, and the dangers of unchecked ego. But perhaps the most important lesson came from Lisa Chen herself, who posted a single message on her LinkedIn profile after the sentencing. I learned this week that you can't control how others react to your words or actions. You can only control your own integrity and professionalism. To the person who tried to harm me, I hope you find peace. To everyone else, don't let other people's issues become your burden. Keep your integrity, do good work, and trust that truth has a way of revealing itself. The post was shared over 10,000 times. Marcus Webb, the TSA officer who first noticed Patricia's suspicious behavior, was commended for his vigilance and received an award for outstanding service. In his acceptance speech, he said something simple but profound. We're not just here to find weapons and drugs. We're here to protect people. Sometimes that means noticing what's happening between people, not just what's in their bags. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Angela Rodriguez, his supervisor, added the case to her training materials with a simple note. Surveillance technology is only as good as the humans interpreting it. Stay alert, stay curious, stay protective of the innocent. And somewhere in a county jail in Colorado, Patricia Drummond sat on a thin mattress and finally confronted the question she'd been avoiding for 6 months. How did I become this person? When did embarrassment become grounds for destruction? When did my ego become more important than someone else's life? She didn't have good answers. But for the first time in her adult life, she started asking the questions. Meanwhile, at 35,000 feet, somewhere over the Midwest, business travelers and families and students flew to their destinations, unaware of how close one of them had come to having their life derailed by someone else's vindictiveness. They scrolled through their phones, read their books, slept uncomfortably in narrow seats, and trusted that somewhere below, in airports across the country, people like Marcus Webb and Angela Rodriguez were watching, protecting, keeping them safe not just from bombs and guns, but from the quieter, more insidious threats that human malice could create. Because airports, for all their chaos and confusion, are ecosystems of trust. We trust the pilots to fly safely. We trust the mechanics to maintain the planes. We trust the security to screen for threats. And we trust each other, strangers sharing space and air and journey, to not deliberately harm one another. Patricia Drummond broke that trust, and the system, the cameras, the trained eyes, the procedures, caught her. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how it did work. And that Wednesday afternoon in Denver, as Flight 2847 finally reached Boston and Lisa Chen stepped off the plane into the terminal, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel, grateful. Not for what happened, but for what didn't happen. For the officer who noticed. For the system that worked. For the justice that followed. She pulled out her phone and texted her husband. Home soon. Crazy story to tell you. Love you. Then she walked through the terminal, past the security checkpoints and the gift shops and the coffee stands, past the thousands of cameras recording every moment, and she smiled. Because she was free. Because she was innocent. Because someone had been watching, protecting, serving, and somewhere in that terminal, a TSA officer whose name she'd never know was watching someone else, reading body language, trusting instincts, protecting another traveler from a threat they didn't even know existed. The system worked, and Patricia Drummond learned, too late, that karma doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it just wears a badge and carries a radio and pays attention. Lisa Chen's story didn't end at the Boston terminal that day. 3 weeks after the incident, she received a call from the Denver District Attorney's Office. They needed her to provide a victim impact statement for Patricia Drummond's sentencing hearing. Lisa had been trying to move past the whole ordeal, diving into her work, avoiding the news coverage, but this call brought it all rushing back. She sat at her kitchen table that evening, laptop open, cursor blinking on a blank document. How do you quantify the impact of something that almost happened? How do you describe the violation of knowing someone had studied your schedule, changed their flight, carried fake drugs onto a plane, all with the singular goal of destroying you? She started typing. Your Honor, my name is Lisa Chen, and I'm the person Patricia Drummond targeted for destruction. I want to be clear about something from the start. I barely knew this woman. We shared a panel at a conference. I asked a professional question about data she'd presented. It was the kind of exchange that happens 100 times a day in professional settings. I went home that night and didn't think about it again. But Patricia Drummond did. She thought about it so much that she decided my life needed to end. Lisa paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. She continued. I've thought a lot about what would have happened if TSA hadn't caught her. I would have landed in Boston. I would have been pulled aside by police. They would have found white powder in my bag. Powder I'd never seen, never touched, never knew existed. I would have been arrested, handcuffed, processed. My name would have been in the system. Even after the substance tested negative for drugs, the questions would have remained. How did it get there? Was I lying? Was I trafficking? She kept writing, the words flowing now. My clients would have heard. My employer would have investigated. My reputation in a highly competitive industry would have been damaged beyond repair. I might have lost my job. I definitely would have lost opportunities. And all of this because one woman couldn't handle professional critique. Back in Scottsdale, Patricia's daughter Emma was also writing. She'd been avoiding her mother's calls from jail, unable to process what her mother had done. But her therapist had suggested writing might help. Emma was 28, a middle school teacher, and she'd always seen her mother as demanding but generally good. This revelation had shattered that perception. I keep thinking about all the times Mom complained about people, Emma wrote in her journal. The neighbor whose tree dropped leaves in our yard. The colleague who got a promotion Mom wanted. The woman at yoga who took her spot. I always thought Mom was just venting, just being a little dramatic. But now I see it differently. She wasn't venting. She was collecting grievances, building cases, waiting for chances to strike back. Emma's pen moved faster across the page. What scares me most is that I might have her in me. When a student challenges me in class, when a parent questions my methods, do I react professionally, or do I harbor resentment the way Mom did? I'm terrified of becoming her. Meanwhile, Marcus Webb was giving a presentation at a TSA training facility in Virginia. The room was full of new recruits, fresh-faced officers eager to learn. Marcus clicked to a slide showing the blurred security footage from Gate 37. This is what we call predatory positioning, he explained, using a laser pointer to highlight Patricia's movements. Notice how she's not looking at her phone, not reading, not doing anything normal passengers do. Her entire focus is on one person. She moves when they move. She positions herself for access, not comfort. This is the pattern. A recruit raised her hand. But couldn't she just be someone who spaces out and accidentally stares? Marcus nodded. Good question. Yes, people zone out. But watch the intentionality. She follows the target into the boarding line. She boards the plane and chooses a seat with a sightline. She stands during the safety demo, which hardly anyone does, and moves toward the target's row. It's a pattern of behavior, not a single moment. Another recruit asked, "What made you first notice her?" Marcus thought back to that day. Honestly, gut feeling. Something felt off. Her posture was too tense. Her movements were too calculated. I've been doing this long enough that I can feel when someone's not here just to catch a flight. They're here for something else. He clicked to the next slide, showing Patricia being escorted off the plane. This woman was willing to commit multiple felonies because someone asked her a question at a conference. Think about that level of disproportionate response. Think about that mindset. And then remember that she had to pass through multiple security checkpoints, multiple opportunities to reconsider, multiple moments to say, "This is insane, I should stop." But she didn't. She kept going. That's not impulsive behavior. That's committed malice. The room was silent. Marcus continued. Your job isn't just to find prohibited items. It's to read people, to understand behavior, to recognize when someone is in this airport with harmful intent. Could be terrorism, could be trafficking, could be something like this. Personal and vindictive, but no less dangerous to the target. Stay alert. Trust your training. Trust your instincts. In Boston, Lisa was meeting with her company's security team. After the incident, her employer had taken her safety seriously, implementing new protocols for travel, providing security consultation, and offering counseling services. The head of security, a former FBI agent named Tom Reeves, sat across from her. I want you to understand something, Tom said. What happened to you is rare, but it's not unique. Every year, people attempt to plant drugs, weapons, or other contraband in rivals' luggage. Most don't get caught because most don't have a trained officer like Marcus Webb watching. You got lucky, Lisa bristled slightly. I wouldn't call it lucky. Poor word choice, Tom acknowledged. You were protected by a system that worked the way it should. But here's what concerns me going forward. Patricia Drummond will eventually be released. She'll be on probation. There's a restraining order. But determined people find ways around barriers. I want to make sure you're prepared. Lisa felt a chill. She'd been so focused on the court case, on the immediate crisis, that she hadn't thought about after. You think she'd try something again? Tom leaned forward. I think she's someone who planned a serious crime over a minor slight. That kind of personality doesn't usually accept consequences gracefully. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. We'll monitor the situation. When she's released, you'll be notified. We'll review your security protocols. But I also want you to be psychologically ready for the possibility of future contact. Lisa left the meeting feeling shaken. She'd thought this was over, that Patricia's arrest and prosecution meant the end of the threat. But Tom was right. Jail time was temporary. Restraining orders were pieces of paper. Patricia's mindset, her capacity for vindictive planning, that might never change. That night, Lisa did something she rarely did. She called her mother in San Francisco and told her the whole story. Her mother listened quietly, then said something Lisa would never forget. You know what the hardest part of being an immigrant is? Not the language or the culture shock. It's learning that not everyone wishes you well. Back home, in our village, if you succeeded, the community celebrated. Here, your success can make you a target. But here's what your grandmother taught me. Small people try to diminish others to feel big. Big people lift others and stay tall. That woman who tried to hurt you, she's very, very small. You keep being big, Lisa cried then, releasing the tension and fear she'd been holding since Denver. When she finally spoke, she asked, Mom, how do I stop being afraid of her? Her mother's response was immediate. You don't stop being cautious. Caution keeps you safe, but you stop giving her power over your peace. She wanted to destroy you. She failed. She destroyed herself instead. That's the universe working exactly right. You live your life. You do your work. You be excellent. That's the best revenge and the best protection. Months later, at Patricia's sentencing hearing, Lisa read her victim impact statement in person. Patricia sat at the defense table, her expensive blazer replaced by a jail-issued jumpsuit, her perfect hair limp and unstyled. When Lisa spoke about the psychological impact, about the nightmares of being arrested for something she didn't do, about the violation of being targeted so methodically, Patricia looked down at her hands. Judge Cho asked Patricia if she had anything to say. Patricia stood, her lawyer beside her, and for a moment it seemed like she might actually apologize. Instead, she said, I made a terrible mistake in judgment. I let my emotions override my common sense. I accept the consequences of my actions. It was the most hollow non-apology Lisa had ever heard. No acknowledgement of the specific harm. No recognition of Lisa as a person rather than an obstacle. Just corporate speak deflection, the same language Patricia had probably used her entire career to avoid accountability. Judge Cho clearly felt the same way. Her sentencing remarks were blistering, including the line that would be quoted in every news article about the case. You didn't make a mistake, Ms. Drummond. You made a choice. Multiple choices, over weeks of planning. You chose cruelty. You chose vindictiveness. You chose to potentially destroy another human being because your ego couldn't handle a professional moment of discomfort. That's not a mistake. That's a character flaw of profound dimension. As Patricia was led away to begin her sentence, Lisa felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not vindication, but sadness. Sadness that someone could waste so much energy on hatred. Sadness that a professional woman with education and resources had chosen this path. Sadness for the people who'd loved Patricia and were now grappling with who she really was. Lisa walked out of the courthouse into bright Colorado sunshine. Reporters shouted questions, but she waved them off. She'd said everything she needed to say inside. Now she just wanted to go home. Back to Boston. Back to her life. Back to the work she loved. At the airport that evening, going through security, Lisa found herself paying attention in a new way. She watched the TSA officers scanning faces, checking IDs, monitoring behavior. She saw the cameras, dozens of them, recording everything. She understood now that security wasn't just about machines and metal detectors. It was about people like Marcus Webb, paying attention, trusting their instincts, standing between travelers and those who wished them harm. When she reached her gate, she saw Marcus Webb standing near the security checkpoint. She almost didn't recognize him out of context, but then their eyes met, and he nodded slightly. Lisa walked over. "Officer Webb? I'm Lisa Chen. I never got to thank you properly." Marcus smiled. "Just doing my job, ma'am. How are you holding up?" "Better now. The sentencing was today. It's really over." Marcus hesitated, then said gently, "It's over legally, but recovery takes time. Don't rush it. Don't feel like you have to be fine because justice was served. What she tried to do to you was traumatic. Give yourself permission to process that." Lisa felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. For everything. For noticing. For acting. For saving me from something I didn't even know was coming." "That's the job," Marcus said simply. "Stay safe out there, Ms. Chen." Lisa boarded her flight with a strange sense of closure. Patricia Drummond had tried to write Lisa's ending, tried to script her destruction. But the story hadn't gone Patricia's way. The cameras had watched. The trained eyes had noticed. The system had worked, and Lisa Chen was going home.